I'm Michael Haig. I'm working for the Smithsonian Institute and the Nature Conservancy, and we are here banding jays in Cincinnati on Santa Cruz Island. And right now we have a few banded jays going into the trap and one unbanded jay thinking about going into the trap. So we're going to try to get that guy. Amazingly enough, it's pretty similar to your childhood rabbit trap. It's just a stick, a box, and a string with peanuts underneath it. Okay. So here we have an adult island scrub jay. They are absolutely stunningly blue, and actually more blue than the western scrub jay. And a couple things that identify them from the western scrub jay are their bill size, which these guys have much larger bills, and their undertail coverts, which you can see are kind of a light blue, wispy blue color, and the western scrub jay does not have that. It's just kind of a gray, I believe. When we catch birds too, we try to age them as hatch year or after hatch year, which means that they were either born this spring or they were born before this spring. And we don't really have a way of telling anything beyond that, because of their molt patterns. So one way that we tell how old they are is we look at their tail feathers. And this guy, you can see, has beautiful, shiny, fairly truncate, squared off tail feathers, which means that it was an adult. And the reason why they are more truncate than a hatch year bird is because when they are in the nest, they grow all of their feathers at one time. So those feathers, they're putting a lot of energy into growing all of these feathers at one time. So each feather, as an individual feather, is much less resistant to wear. It's kind of has a sharper tip as a result of that. So the entire first year they'll have this really ratty kind of pointed tail, and also feathers on their wing will look the same. These will be kind of a drabber gray color, and they'll be narrower and more pointy.
So can you tell by looking at that bird approximately its age, just by?
No, once it's no longer a hatch year, it's impossible to tell.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
So.
Which is another thing that is helpful about having these bands, is that if we band them as hatch years with this unique color combination, and then researchers down the road, 10 years down the road, are still seeing this same bird with the same combination, or they recapture the bird and it has the same band number, then they'll know that that bird is at least 10 years old, or they'll know when it was banded, which is just incredible for keeping age tallies on these birds.
They're not very good flyers, that's why they're stuck out here on the island, and they're only found out on Santa Cruz Island, which is quite incredible. Oftentimes we don't know the sex when we band them.
I see.
And we won't find out until we see either the female rattle or the male call or something like that. So yeah, here we have an unbanded bird. We can tell it's an after hatch year. It's got kind of truncate feathers. So by that I mean they're squared off. Looking at its coverts, they're nice and blue. They're fairly broad. So the first thing that we do is we put an aluminum band on these birds, the one that basically puts them into a database where anybody can look it up in the future, and it distinguishes it amongst every single songbird in North America. I just put the aluminum band on. You can see it. It's got its 9-digit number too. And then next I put the plastic bands on. And we use something called THF to melt the plastic together, so that way they can't take the bands off right when we put them on, basically. I'm going to measure its wing chord and its tail length. This is kind of a way to tell us how large the bird is in comparison to the other birds. It's kind of like a human height. Now I'm measuring its bill, and part of the reason why we measure its bill is because they found that there's actually a difference in bill morphology, bill size, and amongst the jays across the island. So the birds in the pines have kind of a more narrow bill than the birds that are over in the more habitat. And they think it's because the birds here are more adapted to sticking their bills inside of the pine cones and stuff, which is pretty cool. Alright. Fat blowing on all of its feathers, so that way I can see the base of their feathers. When birds molt their feathers, they have a sheath around them, and you can see that sheath and you can tell whether or not they are actively molting or not. Also, in songbirds, they carry fat in this hollow on their throat called their furculum, and generally jays, since they're not migratory birds, they don't carry it. They might have trace amounts in there, but most of the time birds that will build up fat in their furculum are the birds that are about to migrate. So generally we have no fat in these birds. This guy has a fat of 0, which means none, and no molt. Right now I am taking a small blood sample. We do this for genetic sampling, and also if we want to, we can use it to sex the bird. And then we also take feather samples. It's also another way that we can genetically sample them and stuff like that. So we actually put the bird in these cups upside down to weigh him. It seems kind of cruel and unusual, but it's actually a super comforting way for us to weigh them. You know, it tucks their wings against their body so they can't thrash around. It's kind of a dark space, you know. So generally they're fairly calm inside the cup. With our radio birds that we've been studying for the last couple seasons, we actually get them genetically sexed, so that way we know pre-radio tracking what they are. So we have little harnesses actually that are made with this elastic string, and basically it's a little backpack that sits on their back. It just goes like right here in this little area where there's not a lot of feathers. It just sits there. Each strap goes and wraps around the legs, and then the antenna hangs off down with their tail. And we just use these little crimp tubes to hold the elastic together. And it's basically just a little battery attached to something that just shoots out a signal every 2 seconds. And so we type in the frequency on an antenna, and then we walk around finding them through all this crazy stuff.
So it's all manually done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully in the future we'll be able to get ones where we can set up towers on high points, and they can just triangulate where the birds are throughout the day. That's kind of what we're looking into for the near future.
Interesting.
It'll make it easier for us and more accurate, because we will be able to track them multiple times throughout the day and see what kind of movements they have, not just like an overall general foraging area.
Hi, I'm Nora Livingston. I work for the Smithsonian Institute through TNC, and I've been studying the jays for 3 seasons now. In the fall, we spend a lot of our time radio tracking hatchier birds. Hatchier birds were born this spring, so just about 5 months ago these birds jumped out of their nest, and last month we caught them in a box trap, and we attached little dime-sized transmitters, radio transmitters that submit a little signal every couple of seconds that these receivers and antennas pick up. And so our goal for this season is to we put out 20 transmitters, so we have 20 birds that have these radios on them. And every single day we use the equipment to track down the bird and get a GPS point of where they're spending their time. And one of the biggest reasons we do this is to see where these young birds are spending their time in the first year of their life, which other birds they're interacting with, whether or not they're starting to do pair bonding rituals where they get to know if they want to mate with a bird for a long time, or just kind of practice mating rituals. And another reason is just to see where they disperse to, where they go from their nesting area to where they're going to set up a territory and have essentially the rest of their life, spend the rest of their life. So right now we have a bird that's been living near the field station here, and so I'm going to turn on my equipment and see if we can find this bird today.
Great.
go this way. So if you hear that signal every couple of seconds, that's pointing, I'm pointing this in the direction of the bird, and it'll send me a stronger signal, and I can use the buttons on this dial to allow me to get closer to the bird. Of the 20 birds that we have, we spend about, 2 people spend 6 to 7 hours a day following them up hills, it's getting stronger, trying to get at least 10 or 15 independent GPS points, maybe one on each of our birds a day. He's getting really close. So we haven't been able to find this bird. It's pretty far across the canyon right now. So I'd just like to quickly talk about the equipment that we use. And this antenna and receiver and the radio transmitters themselves just gather the most amazing data for us. And if you have any interest of participating and helping the Jay crew study these incredible birds, and you'd like to make a donation, you can go to the UC Reserve website and make a donation, earmark it to the Island Scrub Jay crew, and you can help us find these birds, attach transmitters to these birds, and gather information about where they go after they're born, and help us learn more about these fascinating creatures so we can teach you.
All right, there you have it.
Woo.